Humans are a tangled mess, while animals are shallow and straightforward. Think about that for a second. This incredibly sharp observation wasn't made by some modern psychologist or a behavioral economist. No, it was spoken over 2.5 millennia ago by a man named Pessa. He was the son of an elephant trainer, and he was having a conversation with the Buddha. Pessa spent his entire life training these massive, powerful animals, and through that, he realized something profoundly true about the hidden complexities and, honestly, the sheer hypocrisy of human nature.
See, when Pessa trained an elephant, the animal's behavior was straightforward. An animal's deceit, if you can even call it that, is shallow. But us humans, we are a totally different story. We have this uniquely tangled ability to think one thing, say something entirely different out loud, and then turn around and act in a third, completely contradictory way. This inherent human deceit, this internal chaos, really sets up the core problem we are looking at today, the deeply tangled mess of the human mind.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking the source of Pelea's fascinating conversation. It's an ancient Buddhist text called the Kandaraka Sutta. Now you might be wondering, what exactly does a 2,500-year-old text have to do with our modern, hyper-connected, AI-driven world? Well, the answer is kind of everything. Because while our technology has evolved at just a blinding speed, the fundamental hardware of the human mind, it hasn't changed a bit. We're going to use this text as a profound, timeless diagnostic tool to understand the root of chaos in our world today, and more importantly, how we can actually go about untangling it.
Section 1. The Complexity of Humans.
Section 2. The 4 Types of People.
So, the Buddha didn't just agree with Pessa. He provided this stunningly analytical response. He essentially categorized all of humanity into a beautifully simple system. What we're looking at here is a timeless psychological matrix. It's basically an ancient personality test, but instead of mapping things like introversion or agreeableness, it evaluates us on one single vital metric, which is harm. We have 2 axes. On one side, do you torment yourself? On the other, do you torment others? And this creates 4 distinct types of people. The absolute crucial point here is this metric of harm. In this ancient framework, your worth isn't measured by your wealth, your social status, or how technologically advanced you are. It is measured entirely by the suffering you inflict. Do your actions cause pain to yourself, to the people around you, to both, or to neither? It takes that incredibly tangled mess of humanity and simplifies it into a crystal-clear framework, separating those who perpetuate suffering from those who can actually achieve real peace.
Section 3. Those who cause torment. Let's dive right into the first 3 quadrants of our matrix, the folks caught in the cycle of causing torment. First up, we have Type 1, the self-tormentors. In the ancient world, this usually took the form of extreme religious ascetics, and the source text gives us these incredibly vivid, frankly shocking details. These were people who would fast for a week straight, wear garments made out of owl feathers or literally human hair, sleep on actual beds of thorns, and survive by eating moss or even dung. I mean, wow. They truly believed that by severely punishing their physical bodies, they were achieving something holy. But the text points out that this intense religious zeal is often just a tragic misdirection of energy. It's really just another form of suffering, where they are making themselves miserable on purpose.
Then we have Type 2. The tormentors of others. Now, these individuals preserve their own personal comfort, but they actively inflict violence and suffering upon the world around them. The text specifically lists common professions of that era: butchers, executioners, thieves, bird catchers, basically people whose very survival or success is built directly on the pain and destruction of other living beings. They absolutely love happiness and hate pain for themselves, yet they freely distribute pain to everybody else.
Now, Type 3 is perhaps the most fascinating, because these are the people who torment both themselves and others. Take the ultimate example of that era, the grand royal sacrifice. You'd have a powerful king or priest sleeping on bare dirt and fasting, practically starving themselves to prepare for the ritual, so there's your self-torment. But then, look at the cost of the ritual itself. To build the sacrificial arenas, slaves and laborers were forced to work under the threat of violent punishment, literally with tears streaming down their faces. And then, thousands of animals, cows, goats, horses, are slaughtered. It completely exposes the hypocrisy of these grand, supposedly holy gestures that at the end of the day just create a massive web of torment for absolutely everyone involved.
Section 4. The Path of Non-Harming.
After hearing about those first 3 types, Pessa the elephant trainer wisely rejected them all as just different flavors of suffering. So let's shift our focus to the ultimate solution, the 4th type of person.
The text describes them using some of the most beautiful imagery you can imagine. Hunger-free, fully quenched, cool, experiencing bliss. Think about that. In a world that is completely on fire with desire, stress, and conflict, this fourth type of person has achieved a state of profound coolness. They don't harm themselves, and they don't harm others. This radical state of non-harming isn't just a nice poetic idea. The text presents it as the absolute required foundation for any kind of true peace.
Section 5. Steps to Peace.
So how do you actually get from a tangled mess to being fully quenched? Well, the Buddha provided a blueprint, and it's a very logical three-step progression. It's a step-in-stone process, meaning you absolutely cannot skip to the end. It begins with sila, which is basic morality and ethical conduct. Once that foundation is solid, you move up to samadhi, which is deep mindfulness and concentration. And finally, that culminates in panna, which translates to true piercing knowledge and ultimate liberation. Let's break these exact steps down.
Step 1 is sila. This whole journey has to start in the physical world by literally stopping harm. You abandon killing, stealing, lying, and harsh speech. But it's not just about what you don't do, it's about actively embracing deep compassion for all beings. The text also highlights this concept of radical contentment, and it uses a really beautiful metaphor. It says that just as a bird flies with only the burden of its wings, a practitioner travels with only their robes and a bowl. Finally, sila involves guarding your sense doors, so really watching what you consume visually and auditorily. This acts as a necessary protective shield for the mind against greed and distress.
Okay, so once the outer world and your physical actions are quieted down through sila, you're ready for step 2, samadhi. This is where the practitioner retreats to solitude and turns entirely inward to pacify the mind's internal chaos. They systematically clear out what are called the 5 mental hindrances, things like laziness, ill will, restlessness, and doubt. By purifying the mind of all these everyday distractions, they can enter what the text calls the 4 jhanas. These are increasingly profound, blissful states of deep meditative absorption, where the mind becomes incredibly sharp, perfectly steady, and totally clear.
Now here is where things get really fascinating. This laser-focused concentration actually unlocks panna, true knowledge, and it happens in 3 specific stages. First is Pubani Vasanusati Nana. This is the profound knowledge and direct recollection of one's own past lives. And the text describes remembering not just 1 or 2, but thousands of past existences across vast, sweeping cosmic cycles. Just imagine for a second how much your perspective would shift if you could see the sheer staggering scale of your own existence over eons. It completely destroys the illusion that your current temporary identity is the center of the universe.
Building right on that, the practitioner unlocks the second knowledge, Satipatthana, which is often called the divine eye. This expands their vision outward from just themselves to all beings in the universe. With this knowledge, they see the absolute, inescapable mechanics of cause and effect. They literally see how beings rise and fall, how they experience joy or suffering purely based on their actions, their karma. They see that harm inevitably breeds more harm and virtue naturally leads to peace. And they see this not as some abstract theory, but as an observable, universal law.
And that brings us to the final, ultimate breakthrough, asavakyayanana. This is the complete destruction of the mind's deepest, most subtle taints and impurities. It is the direct, unshakable realization of the 4 noble truths. This piercing insight destroys ignorance forever. The practitioner sees exactly what suffering is, how it starts, that it absolutely can be stopped, and the precise path to stop it. The text declares that when this specific knowledge is attained, the ultimate task is finally done. There is literally nothing more to uncover.
So this brings us to the final results of being that 4th type of person, complete liberation. The mind is entirely freed. The endless, exhausting cycle of torment, of hurting oneself and hurting others, is permanently broken. The individual has completely untangled the mess of their own mind, becoming that cool, quenched beacon of true, unshakable peace in the world.
Which leaves us with a pretty critical question for our modern times. We started out by noting that human complexity, our tangled mess, is the root of all our conflict. And right now, we are collectively trying to solve our biggest global problems with incredibly advanced external technology. But looking at this ancient matrix, we really have to ask ourselves, can the technology of the AI era ever truly bring world peace? Or will our outward innovations always be corrupted by our internal chaos, at least until we commit to this ancient systematic mastery of the human mind? It's something to think deeply about as we continue to build the future. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive on the Explainer, and keep seeking clarity.